Good evening, everyone. Hope you had a good day. Um, I feel like it's gonna become a theme, but once again, things have changed the last minute. um, but I hope you've had a good day. Um, if not, this should be another chill night. I can hear myself, which is good, but also bad. Hang on. There we go. Hopefully that'll fix that. um, so I said last time it was gonna be an adult novel, and I started it, and it was very noodly. The story was not going in a straight line, and despite my best attempt, I was not in a good place this weekend to finish it. Um, So I figured after last week getting the, oh yeah, y'all wouldn't mind if I talked about animal stories. Um, I have one that I'm very fond of that I also know I can read in a real quick amount of time. And so, in all honesty, that's what today is. It is a childhood favorite of mine that still holds up. Um, it is one of the few books that is fiction and not fantasy. Um, I have some, but those are few and far between typically. Oh, my tracking is all over the place. Hang on, please. Okay. Okay, there we go. This is what happens when I do when I calibrate before I put the microphone on. All right. um. So yeah, this is not the book I claimed it would be last time. I am still working on that one, but it was not a week and a half read. It is going to take me a bit more time. So we will get to that one. Hopefully it'll be next time. If it's not next time, there's something wrong. My ability to read has diminished, or it's just more convoluted than I anticipated. So, yes, this is um honestly, I have a lot of fondness for both this book and this author. Um, Going to put the stuff together for this one, I wasn't aware, or I had forgotten that he wrote one of the other books that I've read. But so, without any further ado, let's get started. As per usual, um, I have pulled up. Can y'all see that screen? Because I can't see that screen. Hang on. Okay. I think we can both see the screen now. um, it's just to entertain and inform. I don't hold the copyright to either the works or the cover art. Oh, come on. We are talking about Silverwing by Kenneth Opel. I will say that the name makes absolutely perfect sense in context, but it does sound very much on the fantasy line. It is not. So your publishing details, it was published in 1997 through Simon & Schuster was the earliest I could find. If there was a earlier Canadian publication, I couldn't find the publisher for it. But this is a publication I found. It is part of the Silverwing trilogy. There is a book zero to this trilogy, so there's technically four books. But it is still considered a trilogy because the three that are actually tied together in a whole story are the last three. Which I can remember the Firewing is the third one. I think it's Silverwing, Sunwing, Firewing. I think that's how it goes. Um, and then there is a book zero, um, which is obviously a prequel. This is the original cover. The illustration is by S.D. Schindler, who illustrates primarily like picture books, children's picture books. Um, a lot of them are unlike this, where he did the cover illustrations. A lot of them are actual picture books, so he has an illustration on every page. For just as many that have animals, he's got the ones that where animals are not the main focus. Covered Wagons and Bumpy Trails is written by Verla Kay. He did the illustrations for that one. That one's a picture book. And Cat Wings by Ursula K. Le Guin is, if I remember correctly, I love Cat Wings. But if I remember correctly, there are interior illustrations, but it's less of a picture book and more of a book with pictures. If you're wondering what Cat Wings is about, it's cats that have like bird wings, and they get into all the nonsense you can imagine cats with wings would get into. Lots of cute stuff. And Ursula K. Le Guin, I'm a huge fan of Le Guin. But yes, that is what the illustrator primarily does, are picture books and children's books. I love this cover. You'll see in a second. It's nearly identical to the cover I have, because I did manage to find the cover I have as well. So the one on the left here by Aladdin Paperbacks does use the illustration from the original cover, and that is the one I have, and it's great. The one on the right is from 2007. It's a Simon and Schuster. The cover is by David Franklin, who is a freelance graphic design illustrator. He does, if you're familiar with the Disney brand Kingdom Keepers series, he does a lot of the covers for those. They are, a lot of his work is an interesting either font or shaped title, kind of like this one is, and then a more there's a singular focal point as opposed to having a ton of busy things going on, is what many of them looked like. I do try to take a look and see if I can see a theme when I look at the illustrators. Also, I have to kind of look and make sure that it's the correct illustrator, because many times if the names are not extremely unique, I'm always concerned I will get the wrong one. But David Franklin, who did the one on the right, is the same one who does the Kingdom Keeper series. So about Kenneth Opel, he is a Canadian author who writes young adult novels. Some of them are younger. Like, technically, sure, Silverwing is a young adult novel, but I would lean towards it more being a children's novel than YA. And by that I mean you could probably read it at a younger age, not that an older age kid wouldn't like it. If you don't like bats, so Silverwing, the whole trilogy is about bats. Spoiler for in a few minutes when I talk about Silverwing. If you don't like bats, but you do like steampunk, there is an Airborne trilogy. I think it's just a trilogy. Um, that is steampunk based, and it is also fantastic. He also has another one that is about a train. It's a standalone. It's about a train. That one's a lot of fun. Airborne is a Prince Honor book. Um, oh, what is the one about the train? Hang on. I can tell you the name of the one that's about a train. It is called The Boundless. So that one is about a train. Um, he writes a good story. Like, just hands down, the stories are good. They're fairly tight. If it's part of a series, he he completes the story but leaves some hanging threads. They're not annoying, but they are present. But to be fair, you could never read, like for Silverwing, if you never pick up Sunwing and you only read Silverwing, you can just like fill in the blank in your brain of what happened next, and whether that's what's in the next book or not, it's satisfactory. Um, Silverwing ends in a satisfactory place. Um, it's it's a lot of fun. Um, so what do you need to know? This is an animal story. Um, we talked briefly last time about, hey, if I did an animal book, would y'all be okay with that? The answer was yes, and I needed something I could read quickly. Silverwing fits that bill. It is a relatively fast read. You can probably finish it in 3 hours. um, maybe a little longer, but for me, it was a 3 hour read. Um, it is a coming of age novel, but in a less customary way because your main character is a bat. Most of your characters are bats. Um, so it's not coming of age in the normal way you think of a coming of age story. You're not really dealing with the human problems of transitioning from a child to an adult. You're dealing with the problems of transitioning from completely dependent to independent, which is sort of still the same, but not, because bats. Animals are different, and it is less fantasy. Um, it's there are a couple of mystical elements, so but they are more religion based than fantasy based. So I hesitate to even put it in the realm of fantasy. It's fiction. It's good old fashioned fiction. Um, it's a lot of fun. So your main character is Shade. He is a Silverwing bat, which are a it's never explicitly stated, but he is most likely a North American bat of some kind because they live in a place where they have to migrate. um, and they eat bugs. He is the runt of the group. When you start, you are at the nursery colony. I was about to be like, what is a group of bat colony? Um, you're at the nursery colony. He is less than a year old, so he is the smallest. He is very much aware that he is the smallest and kind of tries to supplement it by being ornery. He's very smart. He's very curious, but he always wants to be bigger. He wants to be important. He wants to not just be the runt that's always people are checking on. He wants to be his own. which is, again, this comes into why I'm like, yeah, it's kind of a coming of age, even though it's a coming of age for a bat. The other thing, and I will mention it here as opposed to later, is that um, a lot of the names in this are not, they're not traditional names, but they're not beyond the pale of things that could be names. Um, there, your there's a bat named Goth. There's a rat named Romulus. So like, there are names here. Some of them are yeah, you'd see them as a name, like Romulus. Some of them you'd be like, I don't think Goth is a name. I don't think Shade is a name, but sure, they're bats. Why not? Um, you meet bats. You meet some owls and some pigeons. Uh, I don't know if you get the names of any of the owls. um, but that will lead into it as an animal novel. So your animals talk. They talk to each other, but they are not magical, so they don't communicate with humans in any way. The whole story takes place during a winter migration from the nesting colony to where the silverwing bats are going to hibernate. You do see other types of bats and other colonies of bats that are differentiated in the way bats are by different shapes, faces, different colors. You've got oh, I'm gonna get it wrong. Gray wings, I think, are the ones that are like furrier and fluffier than the others. Um, but all of them are relatively small in the grand scheme of things. Um, there is a you find out very quickly that there is a law, uh, uh, a law of nature kind of thing. Only it's not quite that primordial. There's a story that goes with it, so that bats are allowed to fly and hunt at night, and then as soon as it becomes day, they have to get out of the sky, and it becomes hunting season for other things. So when the birds show up, they are typically not good. um, it's coming of age. It's Shade's first winter. He doesn't know a lot about the world. He stumbles through. He is jealous. He is selfish. He wants to be important. And at what point is that more important than taking care of yourself? It's a struggle for him. The need to be important and the need to be seen and the need for all of this, versus just surviving. On the other hand, it's like, hey, do I go with the flow and just survive and deal with the fact that I'm the smallest, or do I keep trying to stand out? And at what point is standing out going to get him killed? Um, but there's a lot of growth that happens, for all that he's a 1-year-old bat. Not even 1 years old. It's his first winter, so he's less than a year old. And it's fiction. It's not really fantasy. Like I said, there's not many fantastical elements. The suspension of disbelief is mostly for the talking bats, but like, this will be relevant for one of my recommendations later. But they're not talking to people or wielding swords, so it's not like that kind of a thing. Um, I think the most human thing is like treating other bats' wounds. But even then, it's not like. It doesn't feel beyond the scope of how they have made the bats. Um, and Kenneth Obel has done a great job of, it's like, yeah, no, we've all been there. We've all been the, I want to be important. I'm not as important as I want to be. Um, I don't want to admit that I don't know what I'm doing. That comes up. What if I'm not actually special? Like being told you're not special, one person saying you're special, and then like, cool, I'm special, but what if I'm not? And then like, well, I'm not special, so now what? And a lot of that struggle. Um, there are human elements in it, both as landmarks as they go through a city, and there is not a lot, but there is some discussion about humans interacting with the bats themselves, and what does that mean, and is it a good thing, is it a bad thing. um it comes into there is a prophecy in this. Well, there's two actually. There's one that is very, very old that goes into basically the religion of the Silverwing bats, and many of the other bats have a similar belief. And then there is a prophecy literally told by a bat that is blind, and he's like, I can listen to the stars, both the future and the past. And you're like, sure, okay. Um, the author, Kenneth Obel, does go. It's something small, but it's something really fascinating. Um, they don't describe color anywhere in this. Um, things are either bright or dark, but there's no color. Um, because bats, despite the fact that both their eyesight and their echolocation is great, if I remember correctly, they can't see in color. So it's this little detail of, oh yeah, there's light, and there is bright, and there is dim, but there is not color. So like, oh, the sun is warm, but warm doesn't mean like brilliant and golden and all of the normal colors we associate with sunlight, red. Um, it just means bright, as in not dark. um, so it's kind of an interesting thing of, you get through the story and then you're like, wait, I don't think there was a single bit of color, and you don't notice it until it's pointed out, and then it's really cool actually, that you've gone this whole book and it's like, color, no. So my recommendations, some of these require very little explanation in my opinion, but I will go through them all. Redwall by Brian Jacques is an animal story meets high fantasy. It does have mice wielding swords. It is a kind of traditional defend the home, solve the ancient prophecy, find the sword, beat the bad guy story. With the fun twist of your main characters are mice and badgers and voles and squirrels. The other thing is that if you've never been like, hey, I want to eat acorn bread or watercress salad or what are some of the desserts in Redwall? Anyway, it makes you want to eat the mice, rabbit, squirrel food desperately. it sounds great. And there is always, in any of the Redwall books, there is a description of a feast somewhere, and it's always like, this should not be appetizing. This is like food for critters. And it's just like, I don't know what meadow sweet cream is, but hoo boy, does it sound delicious when we are describing it. The next on this list is Upchuck and the Rotten Willie, which is part of a series by Bill Wallace about a cat named Chuck and a Rottweiler. I can't remember if his owner goes to college. There's something about going to college. Anyway, it's kind of learning to live with and make friends with people around you who may not be anything like you. In this case, it's a cranky cat and a really sweet dog. The Rotten Willie is very sweet, and Chuck is named so because he once threw up in his owner's car. It's another quick, easy read. So Redwall is going to take you a while. Redwall is long. It's going to make you cry, but it's good. Upchuck and the Rotten Willie probably won't make you cry and is much like Silverwing. It's a pretty easy read. It's a pretty quick read. Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim by Robert C. O'Brien is what if animal stories, except your secondary characters, the Rats of Nim, were escaped lab rats. So they are extremely intelligent. If I remember correctly, the problem is the nest is being moved. Mrs. Frisbee's nest is... It's either being moved or demolished. It's one of those. And so she goes seeking help. It is a little bit on the Dr. Science horror side of children's animal books, because some of the Rats of Nim are descendants of the lab rats, and some of the Rats of Nim are in fact the ones who were experimented on in the lab and remember it and will tell you about it, and it's just like, oh yikes. It is good. It has a movie if you want it, but it's one of those old like Don Bluth style animations. Freaked me out. Like, full stop, freaked me out. And then Ragweed by Avi is the Poppy series. I always thought Poppy and Ragweed was the first one. It's not, apparently. It's just Ragweed. It's a mouse. It's about mice. Field mice. And coming back from a journey, and what do you do when you've come back, and how do you try to fit back in? Do you try to make homebodies be adventurous? What are you doing? It's really sweet. Like, it's the exact opposite of Miss Frisbee. It's just super sweet. There are owls. Actually, speaking of that, there are owls in 3 out of 4 of these. The ones that deal with mice. So Redwall, Miss Frisbee, and Ragweed all have owls in them in various degrees of antagonism. Because much like owls will prey on bats, they will also prey on rats and mice. But they are a lot of fun. And the next one, which was a fun challenge for me, is fiction, not fantasy. And one of these on here is a big old caveat, and I'll get to it in a second. So because of Winn-Dixie, it will make you cry. It's a Kate DiCamillo. And while it is not an animal book in that it is not about the animal, Winn-Dixie is a dog. And it is following the girl who finds a dog in a Winn-Dixie and names it Winn-Dixie and adopts it because she claims it's hers. A Single Shard by Linda Sue Park is um, it's a book about art and artistry. It is about is it technically porcelain? Hang on, let me make sure I get this correct. I don't know if it's technically considered porcelain or not. Uh, let me not get this wrong. Uh, it is about Korean pottery. I don't think it's technically considered porcelain. Um, but it is about a boy who um, finds himself apprenticed in a really roundabout way to a master worker, um, and so it's a historical fiction. The Black Stallion by Walter Farley. This one could have gotten the animal story, except despite the fact that the horse is the whole point, the horse is not, in fact, the main character. Not technically. Um, I mean, don't tell that to my childhood self who read the Black Stallion books because of the horse, but he neither the Black Stallion nor Satan were the main characters of their respective books. Um, the Black Stallion is a survival book of all things. Uh, uh, it's a lot of fun. I highly recommend it. If you like horses, or if you know someone who likes horses, this is a good book for them. It's well written. The horse makes sense doing horsey things. How do I explain it without spoiling it? Well, there's sequels. There's a whole series. If you like it, there's a whole series about the Black Stallion and the Black Stallion's descendants, and whether or not some of them race. Spoiler: some of them race. um, and then King of Shadows is the one where it's not technically a fantasy novel. There is a fantasy trope in that your main character not body swaps, but kind of body swaps with a historical character because he's sick with, I want to say the plague. He's sick with something that could have absolutely killed all of Shakespeare's troupe. And so it is a historical fiction about Shakespeare and theater in Shakespeare's time. It's a lot of fun. I am a fan of it. So there is that like time travel-y element of it, but at the same time, like that's not really. It's a fun plot device, but that's not really what the whole thing is about. Um, so yeah, this was really quick, probably because it was a children's book that I could read in 3 hours. So that being said, um, so why did I pick this other than the fact that I knew I could read it in 3 hours? I like bats. I think this is what got me into bats. But it's hard to say. Because so Silverwing and Redwall and oh, what's the other one? There was another book that I read all roughly around the same time period. Um, and they all dealt with animals. They were all animal books. And it's like, oh, okay, bats are kind of cool. And then part of it Oh, well, part of it is also I have always been a fan of Batman, and at the time, you know, Batman the animated series, bats were cool. Um, and then like the Batman, so you had Man Bat in that, stuff like that. Um, but the other thing is like I have several books on my shelf that I know I can just pick up and read, and I am not syncing very well, am I? Light, you're supposed to make the syncing work better, not worse. um, but this one has a soft spot. It is part of a series. Um, it's a little unusual in the fact that it's like, oh, it's a journey, and you get to the end of this first book, and um, the second book is just a pick up and continuation. Um, that is one of the nice things about this series is that Sunwing, which is the sequel to Silverwing, it's not like and 20 years have passed. It's like cool and like 2 weeks maybe. It's a get up and go kind of sequel. So if you enjoyed this one, you can immediately grab the next one and you aren't losing anything. Um, like I said, I'm a huge fan of Kenneth Opel. Um, his his airship books are delightful. Um, two of them are about strictly airships. I think one of them might be about a spaceship. That feels right. My brain is saying yes, but cuz it's airborne. Yeah, Star Climber. Yeah. Yeah, Airborne, Skybreaker, and Star Climber. Um, but those follow a cabin boy on an airship, and it's just if that sounds like a lot of fun, it is. It's kind of in the same way that Treasure Planet is a retelling, and oh, what if ship but in space, like actual ship but in space. It very much feels like what if actual ship but in sky. A lot of it functions in this weird mix of old-fashioned boat and modern luxury liner meets airships, just airships. Um, but yeah, I really like the way Kenneth Opel writes. It's very straightforward. There's not a lot of like convoluted twists and turns. There are some great hints in Silverwings for plot relevant details, um, where you can actually put together the mystery and solve it yourself. Not more than a few pages before you're told the answer, so you don't have to sit there and like, oh, I forgot, I solved this already. No, no, he'll tell you quite happily. He doesn't pull a Sherlock Holmes and just like outright hide information from you and make you need to find it. Um, it's there. He gives you all the hints you need. Um, yeah, it's a lot of fun. Um, it's a oh, excuse me. It's a good book. I will say, out of the animal book recommendations, Silverwing is probably the closest to Miss Frisbee out of all of those. Um, it's not quite happy enough to be like Ragweed, and it's nowhere near fantasy enough for Redwall. Um, but it it deals with humans enough that it's a little bit like Miss Frisbee, just no lab rats. So yeah, that is Silverwing. Um, I feel like I've read. I'm trying to think of another animal book I've read where the animals are your main characters, but don't. For some reason, the borrowers pops into my head, but that's not right because that's not an animal book. That's about the borrowers. It kind of feels like it though. Um, there are some similarities between the borrowers and some of the animal books. Um, if you like Redwall, um, so Redwall is a massive series that has the benefit of not being. You don't have to read it in order. Um, with the exception of Matameo. If you haven't read Redwall, Matameo makes minimal sense because it is a direct sequel. And a lot of it deals with what happened in Redwall. Um, but other than that, you can read them in any order. It kind of, on the one hand, it depends on do you care about the timeline? On the other, it depends on what animal would you like to be your main character. If you want an otter, I recommend Tagarung. If you want, um, if you want a hare, I recommend the Long Patrol. If you want a badger, I recommend Salamandastron or Lord Brocktree. If you want a squirrel, Triss is a squirrel, and so there's your main character for that. Um, there's a lot of mice. I don't think there's ever a mole main character. You've always got a mole companion. Um, A, they're great. B, they're super handy and like surprisingly in all of these stories, whether they take place in the forest or on an island or on a beach, because Salamandastron, um, somebody who can dig, who knows dirt and earth and rock is super useful. And hey, your choices in the Redwall series are basically just badgers and moles. And even then, your badgers aren't super great at knowing rocks. Um, but yeah, the Redwall series is great if you enjoy a bit of fantasy in your animal story. Um, I don't think there's any humans in those. If there is, they're in Redwall, and they're only mentioned once. Like I think there's horses mentioned in Redwall, and that is weird because I don't think they're mentioned in the rest of the series. I do not think they are. I think they're only in Redwall. um, I was going to list coming of age novels. Like that was an option, but Silverwing is kind of weird because yeah, it is technically coming of age, but it's a bat, and it's like the normal coming of age things aren't discussed here because it's not a human coming of age, it's a bat. Um, well, a lot of the mental things are similar. Some of them aren't. Things like figuring out how to. Oh no. Ow. Oh. Sorry about that. Things like trying to figure out how Echo Pictures work, which is different from echolocation, which is not actually called echolocation. Um, it's a lot of fun. There's a lot in Silverwing where things get renamed because they don't things don't matter to bats that matter to humans. The cathedral, uh, the bat that actually calls it a cathedral is the one who lives there, who has heard humans. Um, they hear about gargoyles from pigeons who live in the city. Who, yeah, it makes sense that they would know that word. But like none of them know what a lighthouse is. You don't know. You don't know what a lot of these things are because you don't need to. You don't need these words because they're bats. It is interesting. There is a little bit of perspective shift. There's another character who shows up who gets some perspective time, not a lot. And he is very much older than Shade. And you can tell that in part because he knows the names of things. Um, Not everything, but he does know, like, he knows what a cabin is. Meanwhile, Shade just calls it a structure. It's like, cool, here's the difference between someone who knows what this is and someone who doesn't. Kind of distinction. Most of the rats know the human terminology, which kind of makes sense because they live primarily in cities. Um, Oh, give me just a second, guys. I am going to go blow my nose right quick. I will be back. I don't know if that's going to make me more sniffly or less. Hopefully less. um, I've already forgotten what we were talking about. I it left with my boogers. So next week or not next week, not next week, next time, um, which will be. Why is this not pulling up my calendar? Thing, calendar. Hello. Would you like to give me a calendar so I can give an exact date? Apparently not. Apparently I'm not allowed to have calendars. Well, there is more than one way to do that. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Uh Why is such a basic thing throwing me off? Let's see. So the 26th. See, all of this to tell you the next time that I should be streaming. So the 26th should be the book I didn't do this week, which should be the adult book. I need the plot to go in a straight line. Like, it's really well written. I already enjoy it, but oh boy, is it not a quick read. Yeah. I do find it funny. So ding on the subject of bats. I really like your nocturnal creatures, or at least like cats, where they're active at dusk and dawn. But I love bats. I love owls. But I do find it funny that both of those have really good like normal vision, even though they're known for more than just that. But I always find it funny that it's like, oh, I love these things. They're, active at night and you can stay up late and see them in certain parts of the world. And like, we saw owls sometimes, and when I was in college, and I would like to be asleep by the time most of these things go out, or get super active. Like, bats, I know it's around dusk, so like, no, I can stay up past that. But it's like, oh boy, if I had to pick between night and day, it's just like, I would rather do day. That being said, I get up early because habits, not because I enjoy it. No, bats are cool. Like I said, the ones in this are small. They're migrating bats. They talk about them using their tail to scoop things up. It's really cute. I'm trying to think if I can think of. I guess Redwall is geared towards kids, but it's a little scary at times. And like, there are some books about animals that I wouldn't consider animal books. Like all the things you're required to read in school, like Where the Red Fern Grows and Old Yeller. Shiloh. Well, and then there's a slew for horses. Whether you're looking at like serialized ones, oh, I can't remember what it is. It's the equivalent of like the Boxcar Children or the Babysitter's Club, but it was about horses. I don't remember what it was, but there's those, and then there's the ones like National Velvet and Black Beauty, and all of those. I guess Charlotte's Web counts as an animal story, in that your animals A talk and B are your main characters. It's a little different in the fact that the humans are actual characters. They're not just plot contrivance. Oh gosh. All I can think of is the old animated movie in Templeton. Yeah. I feel really bad about this being a super short episode because, or episode, stream. My brain, my brain is broken. Because it's about a children's book. But it's not because it's a. I am desperately trying not to spoil these. Um, Especially when they're short like this one. This is like just at 200 pages, so there's not a lot of fluff in it for me to like dance around. So it's like cool. I'm not gonna name every single bad in here. I'm not gonna tell you how you meet every single bad in here, because that defeats the purpose of you reading the book. Um, Unfortunately, that means I can't talk about it as much as I would like to. I like Shade. I mean, he's a brat. He's not he's not the nicest main character you've ever had. Um, but like Violet wasn't exactly nice either from last time, so that's not a requirement. Do I want to make this the shortest stream ever? Well, it's already been a bunch of exceptions. Hey, we're going to talk about an adult one. Nope, we're going to talk about kids. Hey, it should be a long one. Nope, it seems to be a very short one. Well, the good news is, if anything weird comes up, I will make sure to put something on the community tab. And hopefully, unless this book winds up being uh, more difficult to read than anticipated, I should be done with it by the next time. Um, what can I tell you? It is an adult fantasy. It does have magic. And it does involve animals, sort of. We'll see how much the animals wind up being involved. At the moment, there are animals involved. uh, I'm gonna go ahead and call it here. Oh, jeez, I'm about to sneeze again, guys. Hang on, excuse me. Oh, jeez. I'm gonna go ahead and call it. I will see you next time. Have a good night.